The voice was small, trembling, barely louder than a breath. "Please, are you my mommy? Daddy's on the floor. He's not moving." Rachel Monroe blinked through exhaustion, heart pounding. It was 3 a.m. when her phone rang. A child's voice whispered, "Daddy can't breathe. Please help." It was the wrong number. But Rachel, a nurse, barely off a 14-hour emergency shift, grabbed her emergency kit and ran into the freezing rain anyway. She didn't know the child, didn't know the address, just a red porch light, a white house, and a prayer. By sunrise, that mistake would change 3 lives forever. "Mama, Daddy's chest hurts again." The voice on the phone was barely above a whisper, soft, trembling, and so heartbreakingly small that Rachel Monroe blinked twice, unsure if she'd actually heard it. She had been asleep for less than 20 minutes. After a brutal 14-hour shift in the emergency room, Rachel had collapsed onto her narrow bed in her tiny studio apartment. Still in her scrubs, her legs ached, her fingers were stained with antiseptic, and the surgical mask she'd tugged off now lay limp beside her pillow. Her eyes had just begun to close when her phone rang. At first, she thought it might be the hospital again. Maybe someone had called in sick, or maybe they were short-staffed in trauma. Her hand fumbled in the dark until she found the device vibrating furiously on the bedside table. An unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. But something deep in her gut, something beyond logic, told her to answer. "Hello?" she croaked, her voice raw from exhaustion. There was a brief pause, then a sniffle. Then, "Mama, Daddy's chest hurts again." Rachel bolted upright in bed, heart pounding. The heaviness in her limbs disappeared instantly. She swung her legs to the side, her bare feet touching the cold floor. "Sweetheart?" she said, her voice softening. "Who is this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Rachel could hear shaky breathing, the rustle of fabric, and the faint hum of what sounded like a heater or fan in the background. You're not Mama?" the voice said. "No, I'm not," Rachel replied gently. "But who are you, honey?" The little girl sniffled again. I, I pressed the number Mama showed me. She said if Daddy gets sick again, I have to call. I didn't mean to mess it up. Please don't be mad." "I'm not mad, I promise," Rachel said, instantly calming her. "You did a very brave thing calling for help. Are you alone right now?" There was silence again. Then the girl whispered, "Daddy's on the floor. He's not moving right. He's making a sound like a fish, like he can't find the air." Rachel's heart dropped into her stomach. "Okay, honey," she said, standing up and grabbing the stethoscope from her coat hook out of instinct. "Can you tell me your name?" "Emily," the girl said. "I'm 4.5." Rachel's throat tightened. "Emily, are you hurt?" "No, I'm just scared." "I know, sweetheart. You're being very brave. I'm a nurse. My name's Rachel. Can you tell me where you are?" "I don't know our address," Emily whimpered, "but the house is white, and we have a black fence, and a red light on the porch. Mama made the light red so the ambulance could find us." Rachel looked down at herself, still in scrubs with her emergency bag on the chair nearby. Her shoes were damp but wearable. The city outside her window was cold and dark, slick with the shine of light rain under amber streetlights. She didn't think. She didn't pause. "I'm coming," she said. Rachel grabbed her bag, phone, and keys and was out the door in under 30 seconds. The streets were mostly empty, the kind of quiet that only came at 3 a.m. Street lamps flickered, and the mist of early rain danced under their glow. Rachel drove through winding neighborhoods with no idea what she was really looking for, just scanning for any white house with a black iron fence and a red porch light. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Her eyes scanned every corner like a hawk, her grip on the steering wheel tightening. Doubts crept in. What if the call had been a prank? What if it wasn't real? Then she saw it. A small, aging house, paint chipped at the edges, a black fence running around the front yard, and on the porch, glowing like a beacon, a single red light. Rachel slammed the brakes, jumped out, and ran to the door. She barely knocked when it creaked open. Standing there barefoot in pajamas was a little girl, no older than 4, her cheeks red from crying, her hair tangled and wild. You came, Emily whispered, her voice still small, still shaky. I told you I would, Rachel said gently, kneeling down to meet her eyes. Emily reached out a tiny hand and tugged at Rachel's sleeve. He's in there, she said, pointing down the hall. Rachel stepped inside. The air was warm but heavy. She could hear shallow, raspy breathing coming from the living room. And then she saw him, a man, early 30s, lay on the floor in front of the couch. His chest rose and fell in erratic spurts, his face pale, one hand clutching his side. Sweat clung to his forehead, and his lips had the faintest tinge of blue. Rachel dropped her bag, her medical instincts snapping into place. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, already reaching into her kit. No response. She pulled out a portable oxygen mask, checked his airway, gently rolled him onto his side, and began assisting his breathing while keeping her tone calm, for both him and the small girl hovering nearby. Emily stood silently at the edge of the couch, clutching a beige stuffed bunny, her wide eyes fixed on Rachel. "You're really helping," the girl whispered. Rachel glanced up, giving her a quick, reassuring smile. "That's what nurses do." Rachel pulled up to the curb, her car's headlights cutting through the misty early morning fog. The neighborhood was still, silent, almost frozen in time. Every house looked similar in the dark, but this one stood out. The small white house with the black iron fence, exactly as the little voice on the phone had described. And at the front, glowing like a signal in the night, was the red porch light. Her heart pounded. The nurse in her had responded to hundreds of emergencies, but something about this felt different, more fragile, more personal. Like she'd been called here not by accident, but by something unseen and urgent. She stepped out into the freezing drizzle, gripping her emergency kit. Her sneakers soaked into the pavement as she jogged across the walkway. The chill bit at her skin, but adrenaline kept her warm. She knocked. The door creaked before her knuckles even made contact. It opened just a sliver, then a bit more. Standing there barefoot and trembling in a worn pajama shirt was a little girl no older than 4. Her dark brown hair was tangled, cheeks flushed, and eyes rimmed red from crying. She clutched a beige stuffed bunny against her chest, like it was the only solid thing in the world. "You came," the girl whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion and disbelief. Rachel knelt down to eye level, despite the cold seeping into her knees. "I told you I would," she said gently, her breath fogging between them. The girl looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to decide if this was real. Then slowly she stepped aside and opened the door wider. Rachel stepped in. The warmth of the house enveloped her, thick and stale with a hint of dust and something else, something metallic and medical. She could hear it now, the labored breathing, faint but uneven, coming from the living room. "I'm Rachel," she said softly, trying to comfort the child as she removed her wet shoes near the entryway. "You're Emily, right?" Emily nodded. "Where is your daddy, sweetheart?" The girl pointed with a small, shaking hand down the hallway. Rachel moved quickly, her boots squelching slightly against the hardwood floor. She turned into the living room and found him. A man, mid-30s maybe, was lying on the floor in front of a threadbare couch. One arm was curled beneath him, the other clutching his chest. His eyes were half-lidded, his lips slightly parted as he gasped for breath. Rachel dropped to her knees beside him. She set down her bag and unzipped it in one practiced motion. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked calmly, even though her pulse was racing. No response. She took a deep breath and moved into action. Oxygen mask, pulse check, breathing rate, skin tone. She spoke to him throughout, softly, steadily, letting the rhythm of her voice cut through the panic. He was alive, but struggling. Something cardiac, likely brought on by anxiety, stress, or an underlying condition left untreated. She adjusted his position, supported his neck, applied oxygen, and watched as, slowly, his breathing evened out. The panic left his face, replaced by confusion. His eyes fluttered open. He stared at the ceiling first, blinking against the low light. Then his gaze shifted and landed on her. Who are you?" he croaked. Rachel gave him a small smile. "A nurse," she said. "You had a call for help." His brow furrowed, still disoriented. "A call?" Behind them, Emily hovered quietly in the hallway, clutching her bunny. Rachel looked over her shoulder and nodded toward the little girl. She called me, she said softly. She thought I was her mom. It was a wrong number, but I couldn't ignore it. His gaze moved toward Emily and softened instantly. Pain flickered across his face, but not physical this time. Deeper, like a memory reawakened. Rachel stood, wiping her hands and checking her watch. I've stabilized your breathing, but you'll need follow-up care. I can call an ambulance or wait until you're strong enough to sit up. I'll wait, he said, voice barely audible. Emily walked into the room and knelt beside her father, her small hand reaching for his. You were so brave, Rachel told her. You remembered a number. That's not easy. The girl nodded solemnly. Mama showed me once, before she got sick. Rachel crouched again, heart aching. She taught you well. Emily looked up. Is Daddy going to die? Rachel's voice caught. She swallowed, then reached over to gently squeeze the girl's shoulder. Not tonight, she said. You helped him. You saved him. The girl leaned into her father's side, curling against him as he slowly rested a hand on her back. The scene was so quiet, so intimate, Rachel nearly forgot she was just a visitor here. An outsider who'd been brought in by accident, by fate, or maybe by something neither child nor adult could explain. She sat on the floor, letting the weight of the moment settle. In that tiny living room, with a red porch light glowing outside and a child's stuffed bunny watching from the rug, something unspoken passed between all three of them. Not yet love, not yet safety, but something close, something healing. Gabriel's eyelids fluttered, then slowly lifted. For a moment, everything was blurry. Shadows, colors, movement. His chest ached. The air he pulled in felt thick and cold against his lungs, but at least he could breathe again. And then the first clear image came into focus. A woman. She sat cross-legged on the floor beside him, a soft expression on her face. Blonde hair damp from rain, scrubs slightly wrinkled, but unmistakable. She was watching him intently, like she'd been doing so for hours. You're not from the hospital, Gabriel murmured, his voice scratchy, each word an effort. The woman gave a faint smile. No, she replied gently. I got a call from a little girl. She thought I was someone else, but she believed I could help, so I came. Gabriel blinked, his brows drawing together in confusion. His eyes darted across the room until they landed on the tiny figure curled up on the couch, hugging her bunny and watching him quietly. Emily, his daughter, his world. He tried to sit up, but Rachel reached out and touched his arm, her movements confident but kind. Take it slow, she said. Your oxygen levels were dangerously low when I found you. I've stabilized you for now, but you'll need follow-up care. Gabriel let his head rest back against the pillow beneath him. I didn't call anyone, he muttered, embarrassed. I didn't want her to panic. Rachel looked toward the little girl, then back at him. She didn't panic. She took action. You raised her well. That struck Gabriel in a place deeper than he expected. He looked away, swallowing hard. Her mom, he started, voice trailing off. You don't have to explain, Rachel interrupted gently. I figured enough when I saw the red porch light. That wasn't for decoration, was it? Gabriel gave a slight nod. No, my wife had heart failure. She was in and out of hospitals for most of the last year of her life. When she passed, I promised Emily I'd keep that light on, just in case. Rachel folded her hands in her lap. Smart. It helped me find you. They sat in silence for a beat. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and the heater buzzed in the corner. The tension that had filled the room earlier had slowly eased, replaced by something quieter. Something like mutual understanding. Can I ask you something? Gabriel said suddenly. Of course. Why did you come? Rachel inhaled slowly, like she wasn't quite sure how to answer that herself. Honestly? I don't know. I was exhausted. I'd just worked a double shift. My legs were like lead. But when I heard her voice, her fear, her hope, I couldn't ignore it. You believed her, he said. I did. Even though it was a wrong number. Rachel gave a soft smile. Maybe not so wrong. He chuckled weakly. I didn't even know she remembered that number. I showed her months ago. One time. She was so little I didn't think it stuck. Well, Rachel said, glancing back at Emily, She remembered the most important part. Gabriel looked at his daughter. She had finally drifted to sleep, curled tightly under a blanket, her bunny still in her arms. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to come, but you did." Rachel's gaze softened. "If I'm honest, I think I needed this too. Sometimes after days of blood and sirens and losing people, I forget what it feels like to save someone quietly." Gabriel studied her for a long moment. "Do you always show up like this for strangers?" Rachel gave a small laugh. "Only the ones who sound like terrified 4-year-olds in the middle of the night." He smiled, truly this time, faint but genuine. "You're something else." She shrugged modestly, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm just a nurse." "No," he said softly, eyes locking with hers. "You're the reason I woke up." Something warm passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something deeper than gratitude. An awareness that, somehow, a wrong number had placed the right person in their lives. Rachel checked her watch. "I should call for follow-up. Maybe get a medic here just to be safe, but I can stay until they arrive." Gabriel nodded, his eyes starting to grow heavy again. "Would you?" "Of course." She stood, walked quietly into the kitchen to make the call, then returned with a blanket and tucked it gently around him. Before sitting back down, she glanced once more at the red light glowing outside the window. That light had been meant for another emergency, but tonight it had found her. The sky was dipped in gold, that soft hour between afternoon and twilight, when the world seemed to exhale. Long rays of sunlight filtered through the tall maple tree in the backyard, painting stripes of warmth across the grass. The scent of blooming jasmine mixed with something sweet, chocolate chip cookies cooling on the kitchen counter. Laughter had drifted here earlier, but now the house had grown quiet again. Rachel Monroe sat on a checkered blanket beneath the tree, her legs folded beneath her and a mug of tea cooling in her hands. Her blonde hair was a little messy from the wind, strands brushing her cheeks. She looked out across the lawn at nothing in particular, her thoughts far away, until she heard footsteps behind her. Gabriel Hartman walked slowly toward her. He wasn't dressed like the sharply suited CEO he used to be. No blazer, no watch, no polished shoes. Just jeans, a soft gray t-shirt, and bare feet. And yet, there was something in his steps, measured, intentional, that gave weight to the moment. In his hand was a small wooden box. Rachel turned to him as he approached, her brow creasing slightly in curiosity. But she didn't ask. She just watched him. Gabriel sat beside her, close but not crowding. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he held out the box, resting it in her palm. It was simple, unvarnished. The kind of wood that felt smooth not because it was new, but because it had been handled 1,000 times. Rubbed by nervous thumbs, carried in pockets, held onto like a secret. Rachel looked at him once, a question in her eyes, then slowly opened the lid. Inside was a silver ring, plain, understated. No diamonds, no ornamentation, just a soft curve of metal, and inside, engraved in small, elegant script, were the words, "Answered at 3 a.m." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she looked up, her lips slightly parted, her breath caught. "Gabriel." He met her gaze, and in it was everything he couldn't put into words. "I never planned to love again," he said quietly. "Not after Claire." Rachel's throat tightened. She didn't interrupt. "I thought love had a limit," he continued, voice steady but low. "That once it was taken away, there was nothing left. That I had spent it all on one person. And losing her, it took everything." Rachel listened, her fingers brushing the edge of the box. "But then that night happened," he said. "You didn't just save my life, Rachel. You stepped into it, like you belonged here. Like Emily's wrong number had somehow always been meant for you." Her eyes glistened, but she held them on his. "I'm not asking for anything today," Gabriel added quickly. "This isn't a proposal, not in the traditional sense. There's no plan, no timeline. I just wanted to give you this." He nodded toward the ring. "It's not a symbol of marriage. It's a symbol of that moment. The moment you picked up the phone and made a choice. You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. But you came anyway." Rachel finally looked down again at the ring. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached in and picked it up, turning it in the soft light. The engraving shimmered like a whisper. Answered at 3:01 a.m. She smiled. Not a broad smile, not theatrical. Just a slow, quiet bloom of something real, something warm. I kept that number for over a year, she said. It used to belong to an old roommate. When I got my own phone plan, they just gave it back to me. I almost changed it once, but I didn't. Gabriel chuckled softly. Fate? She tilted her head. Maybe. Or maybe just one of those strange, beautiful mistakes. He nodded. The kind that saves you? She slid the ring back into the box and closed the lid gently, holding it between her hands like it was something precious. For a few minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the birds, the breeze, and the distant hum of the city. A dog barked 2 streets over. The faint sound of children laughing reached them through open windows. Then came the familiar patter of little feet. Emily bounded out of the house, her curls tied in a messy side ponytail, still holding her well-loved beige bunny. She skidded to a stop when she saw them. What are you doing? She asked, eyeing them suspiciously. Talking, Rachel replied. About me? Gabriel smirked. Maybe. Emily giggled and flopped dramatically into Rachel's lap. You two are always talking. Rachel wrapped her arms around her. That's because we're trying to figure out how to keep up with you. I'm fast, Emily declared proudly. The fastest, Gabriel agreed, ruffling her hair. The little girl nestled in, then suddenly looked up and pointed to the wooden box still in Rachel's hand. Is that a present? Gabriel glanced at Rachel, letting her choose what to say. Rachel opened the box just enough for Emily to peek inside. It's something special, she said. A reminder. Of what? Of the night everything changed. Emily squinted, thoughtful. The night I called you? Yes, sweetheart. Emily nodded solemnly, then whispered, I'm glad I did. Rachel hugged her tighter. So am I. That evening, after Emily had fallen asleep, curled up beside her bunny and a flashlight, Rachel stood by the living room window. She stared out at the red porch light still glowing on the front step, the same one that had led her here a year ago. Gabriel walked in behind her, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one wordlessly. She took it, then turned to him. What happens next? She asked. He shrugged. We wake up tomorrow. We make pancakes. We keep going. Rachel sipped her tea. And if I don't want to leave again? He looked at her, something flickering in his eyes. Then don't. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I might not be ready for forever, she said softly. You don't have to be, he whispered. You just have to keep answering, one day at a time. Because sometimes love doesn't begin with a kiss or a promise. Sometimes it begins with a trembling voice on the phone and someone who chooses to answer. Sometimes it's not about being strong, it's about showing up. Rachel didn't know who was on the other end of that 3 a.m. call. She was exhausted, cold, and off duty. But still, she went. And because she did, a little girl found comfort, a man rediscovered hope, and a life she never planned for quietly unfolded. In a world full of distractions, this story reminds us of something deeply human. Kindness doesn't ask for permission. It just answers. How often do we ignore that inner nudge? To check in, to pick up, to step out of our comfort zone. Maybe someone out there is waiting for your answer. Maybe you've been like Rachel, tired but willing, or like Gabriel, guarded, grieving, not expecting connection, or even like little Emily, just hoping someone kind would hear you. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever made a choice that changed your life or someone else's? Do you believe people can walk into our lives by accident, or is it something more? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's open the conversation. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to Warm Soul Stories, and share it with someone who believes in quiet miracles and second chances. Thank you for being here. This is Warmed Soul Stories, where every story is a gentle reminder of what still matters most. We'll see you in the next one.